It took me a long time to convince Hamas, you have to talk to Trump. He's the person that you got to convince. Trump has an unprecedented style of negotiations and diplomacy. We've never seen anything like it before. I've never seen anything like it before.
The agreement had the vaguest possible commitment to a road towards a Palestinian state.
Yeah, forget it. As long as Netanyahu's in power, forget it. Ask anyone in this country who won this war. I don't think you can talk about winners of this war. Everyone lost.
Hello and welcome to the Fourcast. We're in Jerusalem today to talk to Gershon Baskin. Now, Gershon is someone we speak to quite a lot on Channel 4 News. He is an Israeli negotiator. He's been intimately involved in the events that have brought about this first stage of the Trump plan, and he is also an advocate for a two-state solution. You say this is a big opportunity for both sides.
There's a very big opportunity. For one, after 2 horrible years, the war is over. And this is the most important thing that we can talk about this morning, the declaration by both Israel and Hamas, and of course the United States, Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, that the war is over, is different from every other phase of ceasefire that we've seen throughout the past 2 years. This is the end of the war. The hostages will be coming home in the next days. Palestinian prisoners will be released. And then we'll see the emergence of everything that has to happen on the day after, including the establishment of a new Palestinian government, not Hamas, a Palestinian security force, not Hamas, the multinational force that will be on the ground in Gaza, including troops from Arab countries and European countries and others. And this is the primary guarantee that Israel won't attack Gaza again, or that Hamas won't attack Israel again. There are other elements in there that the details need to be worked out. The Egyptians are largely taking responsibility for the details, and the Egyptians are good at that. And this agreement is backed by the entire world, including most Israelis and most Palestinians.
And do you believe all of that is going to happen in your heart? I mean, there's enormous skepticism that this is essentially just a hostage exchange and a ceasefire, and that they can just go back to it whenever they want.
So let me put this with a big reservation. I am an optimist. It's part of my DNA. So it's difficult for me to sit here this morning and say to you, no, it's not going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work because there is a determination that it has to work. There are more than 2 million homeless people in Gaza today. Gaza is destroyed. There's no infrastructure, there's no water, there's no food, there's no roads, there's no sewage, no schools, no universities, nothing. Gaza is destroyed. People in Gaza, if you ask a Gazan, what's your political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, they'll tell you, go to hell. I want to know where my next meal is coming from. I want to know where I'm going to get my next bottle of water. This is what's important to them, how we're going to live tomorrow. And this is a change also, because it's not the politics involved now, it's life. And life goes on and life will continue. And the Gazans don't want Hamas there anymore. The Gazans blame Hamas for destroying them. So that's a good footing to start on. Now, we have very bad leadership in this region. We have bad leadership in Israel. We have not so good leadership in Palestine. And that needs to change. So we're not looking at the longer term future of what Trump called lasting peace. We're talking about ending the war, creating an ability for Israelis and Palestinians to breathe. Look around Israel, look around Gaza. People are smiling for the first time in 2 years. Now, that's not a sign that everything's going to work. There are going to be difficulties. There are obstacles. But we know what has to happen. We know how it has to happen. And now we have to make it happen.
Can you explain your role in all of this? I mean, it's very unusual to speak to somebody like you who is outside the government, or any government, but it seems intimately involved in what's happened.
Look, until December of 2024, I tried to engage the Israeli negotiators in pushing them toward understanding that the only way to get all the Israeli hostages back was to end the war. And I was talking to Hamas leadership people throughout the period from the first days of the war until today. And it was clear to me what were the contours of a possible agreement.
How were you able to have relationships with all of those people?
I know, I've been doing this work for 47 years. I'm well known. I ran a joint Israeli-Palestinian think tank for 24 years. joint Israeli-Palestinian, where we brought together more than 2,000 working groups of Israelis and Palestinians from every part of Israeli and Palestinian society. I write a lot in the newspaper. I'm interviewed in the media. My name is known. I'm a peacenik, so I have that name dubbed over my face. But nonetheless, I think that what enables me to engage basically everyone is that I have some kind of integrity. I am transparent. I tell the truth. I have my principles. I don't waver from those principles. And I've been doing this for a very long time.
And as a self-declared peacenik, the Israeli government is interested in your help?
No, this is what it was very clear. This Israeli government was not interested in my help at all. But let's face it, for 18 years I've been talking to Hamas openly. In the media, everyone knows about it. Everyone in the world knows about it. And the police haven't come knocking at my door arresting me. That is illegal by Israeli law. And yet, 3 weeks before President Trump entered the White House, I was sitting in the office of the head of the Shin Bet, talking to him about the discussions I have with Hamas. This is part of what I do. When I am breaking the law, I'm also communicating with everyone who needs to hear what the other side is saying.
So you're sort of an unofficial back channel to Hamas?
Yeah, and no one appointed me. There have been times over the last 18 years where I have done this officially. There was a period in May of 2024 for a couple of weeks where I was asked by the Israeli side to send messages to Hamas, and I did that. But I was shut down after 2.5 weeks, probably when Netanyahu was informed that I was doing this. And I was ordered to be shut down from minute to minute. I was shut down. But I don't care. If I have a positive contribution to make, I will make it. And my main motivation is to save human lives. Now, in December, when it became clear to me that there was no Israeli side to talk to, in September I brought an agreement from Hamas to do what we're doing today, back in September 2024. And I got in Hamas in writing, in Arabic and in English, and a voice message. And no one on the Israeli side would listen. In fact, the head of the negotiations in Israel told me, it's a great deal, but the prime minister refuses to end the war. I went to Qatar and presented it to them. I was with the Egyptians. It got to the desk of President Biden, but it had got no traction. So I came to the conclusion at that point, particularly when Trump came into office, and Trump told Netanyahu that I want a ceasefire before I enter the Oval Office, and the ceasefire went into effect on January 19th, the day before Trump entered the Oval Office. It became clear to me that we don't have to talk to the Israeli side. We only have to talk to Hamas and the Americans. And of course, the Americans want to involve the Egyptians and the Qataris at the time, and now also the Turks. So it took me a long time to convince Hamas. Every time they told me, we talked about an idea and they said, Israel won't agree to that, I said to them, forget about Israel. You're sitting in the room with Donald Trump now. You're not sitting in the room with Netanyahu. You have to talk to Trump. He's the person that you got to convince. Now, the problem that I faced was that Trump and Witkoff believed, probably up until the assassination attempt in Doha on September 9th, that Hamas could be defeated to the point of surrender. This was the American attitude, and I had big hopes of Trump's first meeting with Netanyahu, that Trump would tell Netanyahu to end the war, but instead what happened was Netanyahu convinced Trump to let us continue because we're going to defeat Hamas and they're going to surrender.
And you'd been telling them that's not possible.
I kept telling them that Hamas will never surrender to Israel, never. Hamas told me, we're willing to fight to the last Gazan. We will never raise a white flag, particularly not to Israel. To the Palestinian people they would, but not to Israel. Now they didn't buy that. And they gave me all kinds of stories going back to World War II and the Nazis and Japan and even the South Bronx. I couldn't convince them. But what changed everything was the attack of Israel in Doha against the Hamas leadership, where there wasn't a single person in the Middle East who didn't believe that Trump gave the green light for this. There was no way that Israel could have done this without the green light.
Everybody thought they must have been in on it.
That's right. Now, Trump had a big problem, because the interests of the United States and of Donald Trump, the president and the businessman, are much more in the Arab Gulf than they are in the state of Israel. He has great affection for the state of Israel, and his political party, the Republicans and the evangelical Christians, all are very big supporters of Israel, and he can't desert Israel. but he couldn't allow Israel to jeopardize the relations and the interest of the United States in the Arab Gulf countries. So Trump quickly dissociated himself from the attack. I got a WhatsApp in the middle of the night from Witkoff telling me I should tell everyone that the United States had nothing to do with the attack. The United States condemns it. He told me it's going to be in Trump's Truth Social, and it was. The ultimate change came when, after the General Assembly meeting, when Netanyahu was invited to the Oval Office, and Trump handed Netanyahu the telephone and scripted for him what he needed to say to the Prime Minister of Qatar, the apology for attacking in Doha. And then when the cameras went out of the room and the journalists were no longer there, Trump said to Netanyahu, that's it. The war is over. You're going to end the war now. And Netanyahu can't say no to Trump.
And you know that, do you?
I know that.
Because there have been different versions.
No, I know that for a fact. That's what happened. Trump made it real. You know, there's a new way of working in the world of diplomacy today. You create reality. And Trump put it on his Truth Social. The war is over. Netanyahu agreed to it. Israel agreed. And that's it. He created the reality where Israel could not say no. And Netanyahu knew he was going to have a problem back home with the coalition, but he had a majority in the coalition, and that was not a real problem. The next problem was, how do we get Hamas to say yes? Now, he was depending upon the Qataris and the Egyptians and me. I was getting repeated requests from Witkoff to tell Hamas that they better accept the deal or else. Hamas has heard the or else many, many times. What else could Israel do that Israel hasn't already done? But nonetheless, I kept giving them the messages, and I kept telling them that Trump is serious. And the messages I got from Hamas was, we can't trust the Americans. Look what they did to Doha. What kind of American guarantees? If we free the hostages, we're willing to free all the hostages all at once. But how do we know that Israel's not going to attack us the day after? Initially, before the Doha attack, the deal was that Trump was going to give a personal letter, a personal guarantee from the President of the United States that Israel will not attack again. Hamas said that's not enough. That's a piece of paper. It's not worth anything. The reality of the creation of the multinational force became much realer at that point, because the multinational force, an Arab-led international force with Arab participation, maybe Indonesia, Morocco, Turkey, some European support, in Gaza, on the ground. This is unprecedented in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is the internationalization of the conflict in Gaza. If there are foreign troops in Gaza, that is the best buffer to prevent Israel from attacking Gaza again and preventing Hamas from attacking Israel.
But haven't they got themselves in a position where that's not really agreed?
Oh, it is agreed.
In terms of the international force.
No, it is agreed. And the various countries have agreed to send troops. The question is already, it's going to happen. The question is when it's going to happen, who's going to lead the force. I was telling the American side that in my mind it should be led by an American general. If Trump doesn't want American boots on the ground in Gaza, then at least have an American general, have an American administration leading the force, because everyone's afraid of Trump. So you need to put it together in that way. We'll see how it will develop. Trump said there are going to be 200 American troops coming here. Apparently this morning they said they're going to be on the Israeli side or the Egyptian side of the border and not in Gaza physically. They're going to be dealing with the logistics of the international aid coming in, the construction materials and all. Whatever the role the Americans have is good for the process. I think that this emerged because some of the countries said, why should we send troops if you're not?
So at what point did Hamas agree to you that they would go along with this? Can you say who you were talking to?
No, I don't want to give names, but I've been in communication with 8 people in the leadership of Hamas, all outside, not in Gaza. 3 of them responded to me regularly. One in particular, and that's known Ghazi Hamad. He's been my primary interlocutor now for 18 years. And he was the main person I was dealing with, but not the only person. Hamas's response to the initial 21 points that Trump put out was yes, but. But Trump, in a very undiplomatic way, this is unprecedented, this kind of diplomacy, forced, the way that he forced Netanyahu into saying yes, he forced Hamas into saying yes. He created the reality. He put it on his Truth Social that Hamas said yes. And it wasn't yes, but Hamas said yes to the deal.
They hadn't.
They hadn't at that point.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really amazing. But what Trump did to make sure that the yes is a yes is he brought in the Turkish intelligence chief, Ibrahim Kalin, who has a lot of leverage. You know, a lot of people don't know this. They think that the main base of operation of Hamas is Doha. But the main base of operation of Hamas is Istanbul. After the Arab Spring of 2012, and after the fall of Morsi in Egypt, all the Hamas people who were in Syria and all the Hamas people who were in Egypt moved to Istanbul. There's a whole neighborhood in Istanbul made up of Muslim Brotherhood people from Egypt and Hamas people. And Turkey has an enormous amount of leverage on them. They live free in Turkey as long as the Turks allow them to live free there. And Ibrahim Kalin, who's a good friend of Erdogan, who's a good friend of Donald Trump and of Steve Witkoff, got him on the phone and said, Ibrahim, we need you to lock Hamas into this deal. And the Turks, together with the Egyptians and the Qataris, strong-armed Hamas, and Sharm el-Sheikh happened.
So what does it take to keep that on the rails and to stop? I mean, you know, as we speak, there are Hamas gunmen on the streets taking up positions where Israeli soldiers were. Israel is warning that it could be like Lebanon, and they retain the right to hit people.
And let's face it, for a moment, we need someone in Gaza to create law and order, because the first order of business is returning 20 living hostages and 28 deceased hostages. Someone has to do that. If there isn't law and order on the streets of Gaza, that can't be done. So Israel has an interest, even though it's talking against it, has an interest. And most of the people who are being deployed are part of the Hamas Blue Police. They're not the gunmen of Ezzeddin al-Qassam who crossed the border on October 7th. Most of those are dead or in Israeli prison. And most of the Israeli commanders are no longer living either. We have third, fourth level commanders, and between you and me, most of those commanders who are alive will take the option of leaving Gaza with their families, probably to end up in Turkey or Malaysia or Indonesia or somewhere outside of Gaza. The Hamas leadership abroad agreed that the decision to leave Gaza is an individual decision. They didn't rule it out. They didn't veto it. They didn't say it's not going to happen. Maybe in their public announcements they say, no, we will never leave Gaza, our commanders will stay. What they said inside the closed room is that every commander in Gaza wants to leave with their family, and the Americans promised them amnesty. Israel will not go after them and kill them. Now, I can't promise you that, but Trump told this to Hamas.
So when Hamas spokesmen appear right now saying, we're not going to give up our weapons.
Yeah. Everyone has their narrative. Look, everyone lies, first of all. Everyone has their own narrative. There is no way that Israel or Hamas will declare defeat. Both sides declare victory. Ask anyone in this country who won this war. I don't think you can talk about winners of this war. Everyone lost. We are a society in trauma in Israel. We are in pain. The past 2 days have been the first 2 days in 2 years that Israelis have been able to smile, to breathe. And in Gaza, there isn't a Gazan who can stand up and say, we won this war. Why? Because France and England recognize the state of Palestine? Nonsense. That doesn't change their lives this much. They lost the war. Israel lost the war. There are no winners here. Everyone lost. Now we have to lick our wounds and get into the process of healing as societies. And in Gaza, the business is to rebuild, to reestablish life. If you ask a Gazan, do you want a one-state solution or two-state? They tell, what are you talking about? I want to know where I'm going to be living tomorrow. I want a roof above my head.
So at what point do you think the weapons get put away?
I think when there is a functioning non-Hamas government, when there's a functioning Palestinian security force being supported by the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Emiratis, the Qatar, whoever's going to be supporting them, when that security arrangement is working, the Israelis will be forced by the Americans to totally withdraw from Gaza. There will be a security perimeter around the Israel-Gaza border. I don't believe at the end of the day there will be a single Israeli troop there, but it will be a no-entry zone, a shoot-to-kill zone for an extended period of time. All of this will happen beginning in the coming weeks. We're having this...
As quickly as that?
I think so. The names of the Palestinians to run the government have been reviewed. Some of them have been vetted.
Who are they?
Mostly civil society leaders, private sector business people. We'll see. There are different lists floating around. Myself and my Palestinian partner, Samar Sinjalawi, have been having repeated Zoom meetings with a group of civil society leaders and private sector people from Gaza who drafted a letter to President Trump, 2 letters actually, which have already been delivered to President Trump, saying we are non-Hamas people, we hold positions in civil society and in the private sector, and we want to work with you in rebuilding Gaza.
And are they in Gaza at the moment?
They're in Gaza, all Gazans.
Yeah.
We're talking to only Gazans. The Gazans have to run Gaza. There has to be some linkage to the Palestinian Authority, because one of the biggest fears of the Palestinians and the Arab neighbors is that the separation that existed for the past 20 years between the West Bank and Gaza will become permanent. And that's not in the interest of the Arab region. It's not apparently in the interest of the United States as well.
And has the United Nations been cut out of this?
No, what is supposed to happen, and we'll see if it will happen, and this is something that the Americans told the Qataris, the Egyptians, the Turks, and Hamas, is that the deal will be brought to the Security Council for a Security Council resolution that the Americans will support. So we'll see if that happens. They understood the importance of framing whatever's developing in Gaza within international legitimacy.
And what about the on-the-ground operation? Because obviously UNRWA was the primary provider of services in Gaza before, and then Israel kind of cut it off.
I don't know to what level of detail they've gotten into this issue, but they have said that the international organizations that were distributing humanitarian aid before will come back and do the work. I heard specifically that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation will be disbanded. I don't know if that's 100% sure, but that was talked about. There's also a big question if the aid is going to have to flow through Israel or it's going to go directly to the Rafah crossing. There's talk about returning to what was some form of the Rafah crossing agreement from 2005, which involved European Union monitors. I don't know if that's robust enough for the Israelis. Right now, the agreement says that the Rafah crossing will be for people in 2 directions. It has to become a commercial crossing. Gaza can't depend on the whim and will of Israel for everything going into Gaza, but there has to be a mechanism to guarantee that weapons and materials to produce weapons will not be entering Gaza.
And has there been a conversation about how, when you come to the rebuilding of Gaza, you're building it as a potentially viable independent entity that is not entirely dependent for its supply lines, power, water, whatever it might be, on Israel?
That's right. And there have been preliminary talks and various plans about a Gaza seaport, even reopening a Gaza airport. These are very preliminary discussions that will take time. There's a big question of what to do with all the rubble, the millions of tons of rubble, and people have said that could be used for building a seaport, could be used for building an island. One of the civil society leaders that we talked with yesterday was saying that in the past when we tried to do these things, the Israelis blocked us. How are we going to have a situation where Israel is going to block every developmental issue that we have for Gaza? And that's a big question. Here, it's going to rely on the Americans and the Arab partners and the others involved in the multinational force to ensure that Israel doesn't have a veto anymore on what happens in Gaza.
Does all this depend entirely on Trump?
Yes.
Keeping
yes.
the pressure on?
You're right. Trump has to remain engaged. People are afraid that Trump will wander off to somewhere else. His attention span won't stay focused on Gaza. I don't think that's real. I think that Gaza is his biggest success and will be probably his biggest success internationally unless he resolves the Ukraine-Russia war. We'll see what will happen with that. Trump has an unprecedented style of negotiations and diplomacy. We've never seen anything like it before. I've never seen anything like it before. It's a completely new style. And apparently, at least here, you need power or fear of power in order to make politics.
So if he doesn't, then it can all collapse. Because he could also, have his mind changed by events. I mean, perish the thought. But I mean, if there was a massive attack somewhere, that was in support of Hamas or...
Right, Trump is unpredictable, so we don't know. But I think that the foundations that are being laid in Gaza, in this deal with Israel, placing Israel's interest within the Middle East. Trump is talking about expanding the Abraham Accords. It's very important to Israel. Imagine now if Syria and Lebanon join. Imagine if there's some kind of normalization with Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world. These are radical changes of events for Israel and changing the Israeli psyche, that we're not an island, or as Netanyahu liked to call us, a villa in the jungle. We're not in a jungle. The Middle East is changing, and Israel needs to be part of this Middle East. Israel needs to be in good relations with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has conditions for that, and one is ending the occupation, so we have to look forward to that as well.
I mean, the thing about this conversation is it is not like many conversations you have in Israel with political leaders, any of the viable challengers.
Look, most of our political leaders have a vision like this. They refuse to see the area that we live in. Israel has adapted itself to a belief system where any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. It is not. Anti-Semitism is illegitimate, always, in every place, at all times. Criticism of Israel is legitimate. You can't call legitimate criticism, particularly by friends of Israel, as being anti-Semitism. Emmanuel Macron is not an anti-Semite. There's not a single inch of his being that's anti-Semitic. He is a huge critic of Netanyahu and the policies of the Israeli government. And those are two different things. And Israel is going to come out of this trauma. So will the Palestinians. And we're going to wake up to a new day when people say, we've been doing this for 100 years, we can't keep doing this. This is the worst war ever.
But that's still a big shift, isn't it, for Israeli society?
But it will happen because the epiphany that will take place is so powerful because of the losses that we've experienced over the last 2 years. It will create a new reality. We need to help shape it from the bottom up, and we need leaders who are going to voice these new ideas. And what's most important for the Israelis is to hear from Palestinians that they want to live in peace with Israel. What's most important for the Palestinians is to hear Israelis who say, we want to live in peace with Israel. And we in civil society, organizations like the one I'm involved in, the Alliance for Two States, we're going to help to create that reality with a very large investment in social media campaigns of demonstrating that the majority of Israelis and the majority of Palestinians want to live in peace if they believed there were similar people on the other side.
What about the West Bank, though?
The same thing in the West Bank.
I mean,
the West Bank is a disaster zone today. The only reason why the West Bank is not exploding in violence today is because everyone's looking around them and say, I don't want my town, my city, my village to become Gaza. They see what happened in Gaza. They're suffering. They're unemployed. They're bankrupt. Israel is holding more than $2 billion of money that belongs to the Palestinian Authority that Israel collects in taxes for them. 200,000 Palestinians who were working in Israel before October 7th have been unemployed for 2 years. People don't have money to put food on the table. There's a lot of mutual aid. There's a lot of solidarity in the society of people helping each other. There's a tremendous amount of settler violence. Israel is expanding the settlements. One of the things that I believe has been told to the Arabs by the Americans is that there will be no annexation. Trump will not allow Israel to annex territory in the West Bank.
But isn't annexation effectively happening already?
Yes. De facto it's happening, not de jure. Trump won't allow it to happen de jure. We'll see now if we can get the attention of the Americans once the Gaza stuff moves forward, if we can get the Americans to focus on the reality in the West Bank. They have a problem with Mahmoud Abbas. They have a problem with the Palestinian Authority. The Americans have to overcome that. The Palestinian Authority.
What is their problem?
I don't know where it emerges from. I'll tell you what someone told me was in Trump's first term, he had a great meeting with Mahmoud Abbas in the White House. He said, this is a great guy and all. And then the Israelis came with documentary footage of every bad statement that Abbas ever made. And he's made a lot of bad statements. And at that point, Trump said, this guy's got to go. And that was it. The Americans cut off relations with the Palestinian Authority. They wouldn't engage with them. American diplomats here couldn't work with them. And the Biden administration, which promised to change that, didn't.
And are the Arab states keen on helping the West Bank and the Palestinian Authority and the people there develop a more plural political culture, and is the PA receptive to that?
Look, all the Arab states want Mahmoud Abbas to go. There's a meeting taking place in Jordan between Hussein Sheikh, who's the official appointed deputy of Mahmoud Abbas, and Tony Blair, talking about the future, and we don't know what kind of role Tony Blair might play. He's apparently going to have some role in this whole operation. The international community is engaging with two people in the Palestinian Authority, three people maybe. One is Hussein Sheikh, the deputy of Abbas, who's younger. Palestinians don't like him. They think he's the height of corruption. But he is the person that the international community is engaging, the Israeli security engaged with him. The second person they're engaging with is Mohammed Mustafa, the appointed prime minister. Mohammed Mustafa is a businessman. He wears a nice business suit. He was the head of the Palestinian Investment Fund, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of the Palestinian Authority. He's been engaging in reform. The Americans, the Brits, the Europeans have a lot of respect for him and believe that he's really trying to do the job. So the international community is willing to engage with them. The fear of the international community is this separation. They want to see a unification of the Palestinian territory and the Palestinian issue. And the overwhelming majority of the international community want to see a two-state solution, not a three-state solution, not West Bank, Israel and Gaza, but Israel and Palestine, where the Palestinian Authority is West Bank and Gaza with some kind of connection between the two territories. So they're fearful of doing anything that would cement the separation. They want to do something that will bring them together. The French and the Saudis forced Abbas in his letter to Mohammed bin Salman and Macron to make a commitment that there will be Palestinian elections within 12 months. There's an argument if it's 12 months from the date of the letter, which was in June, or 12 months from 2 days ago when the ceasefire began. It doesn't matter. Over the next 10 to 12 months, there will be Palestinian elections. That is the only way of defeating Hamas ultimately, and it is the only way of creating Palestinian unity.
And what difference has the Iran-Israel war had on this whole process?
I think it's not only Iran, it's also what happened in Lebanon with Hezbollah, what happened in Syria with Ashara taking over. One of the examples that the Americans gave me to tell Hamas is that look at this guy in Syria. This was a terrorist, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whatever, and we made him kosher. We removed sanctions and we propped him up in supporting him.
Is that literally what they said?
More or less. More or less, they said, if we can do this in Syria, we can do this in the Palestinian areas as well. If they cooperate, if their focus is on the positive side, on rebuilding, on construction, on peace with Israel, everything is possible.
And is there a al-Shara in Hamas?
No, I don't think so. I think that Hamas has been decimated. I mean, the ideas of Hamas still exist within Palestine. They're dead in Gaza. I mean, the Gazans blame Hamas. Hamas has no chance of reviving itself other than killing everyone, which they could do. They could kill a lot of people, and people were afraid of Hamas before, and they're afraid of Hamas now, but they don't want them. The West Bank less so, because they haven't lived under Hamas, and there is no Hamas leadership outside of prison, either Israeli prison or Palestinian Authority prison. But the West Bankers are seeing the reality of Gaza. And if it's a positive reality that develops, it will impact also.
But how significantly has Iran been weakened as an influence?
I don't know what to believe, because everyone lies. And do they still have...
I mean, did you feel them as a force in your negotiations?
No, not at all. They weren't there.
Right.
They weren't influencing these negotiations at all.
At any point in the last 2 years?
No, even the people within the Hamas leadership who are known to be pro-Iranian didn't really have a voice here. There was at least one of them, of the 4 negotiators in Sharm el-Sheikh, who was thought to believe to be pro-Iranian. I don't know to what extent he still is, but it didn't impact the negotiations.
So let's come to the near. What are the next steps? What needs to happen?
Monday, Trump will be in Israel speaking to the Israeli public. I am 100% positive that whatever he says will not be helpful to the process that we've created here.
Why?
Because he will talk very badly about Hamas, and he will talk very positively about Israel, and he will praise Netanyahu at the rally in Hostage Square celebrating the agreement. When Witkoff praised Netanyahu, the audience booed. Witkoff was stunned. He was like in shock. What do I do now? The audience, twice he mentions Netanyahu's name, and 400,000 people who are in Tel Aviv booed Netanyahu.
Was that just a Tel Aviv thing?
No,
This is lefty Tel Aviv.
Yeah, look, Netanyahu has support of 25% of the country, not more. Even people in the Likud now are questioning in Netanyahu's own party if he has a future. Maybe it's time for him to step down. But when they called the name of Donald Trump, the audience went crazy. Wow, Trump is more popular in Israel than in any other place in the world. I think he's more popular in Israel than he is in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, to that extent. But what needs to happen now is the details of what the international community is obligating itself. The first thing that needs to happen is we need the international force to come to Gaza. And this is what will move the Israelis to withdraw further back. Some of the Arab countries won't send troops until the Israelis are further away out of Gaza, maybe entirely out of Gaza. We need for the Palestinian temporary government of Gaza to be established quickly. We need that government to empower a Palestinian security force, which will largely be a police force. Law and order has to be established. We have 2 million people who need to have their lives arranged. I understand from the Americans that there's already a commitment of $2 billion now to be brought into Gaza for building materials to remove rubble, to create open spaces, to create tent cities or caravan cities where people can reside while Gaza is being rebuilt. There's a big issue that I became aware of from discussions with the Gazans. That's the issue of personal property. This is one of the holy values of the American society, so I think President Trump should be able to understand this. If people say, okay, the building that I lived in was destroyed, but the land under the building is mine. And every inch of land in Gaza is registered in the Palestinian Land Registry. And if land ownership is not respected in the new era, there's going to be total chaos in Gaza. No one will cooperate.
So you can't just come in and rebuild whatever you want and say there's a home.
That's right, and you can't say that this piece of land who belonged to Muhammad tomorrow belongs to Ahmed. This is something which is holy. The Palestinian struggle for freedom is about land, but the internal value within Palestinian society is this land is mine. It's not only the Palestinian people, it's mine. I have a deed on this land, and that has to be respected. I don't know how that's going to be done. Guy I was speaking to yesterday was telling me that he owns, do we talk in hectares or acres or dunam? 190 dunam, which is 78 acres of land next to the Erez crossing, which is going to be part of this security perimeter. A no entry zone, a shoot to kill zone. He said, what happens to my land? I used to farm that land. I had a house on that land. What's going to be the status of that land? I didn't have an answer for him. I said, we're going to have to kick that can down the road. In Arabic, we say, kol shi biwaqto. Everything has to be dealt with at the right time. This is not the right time for him to ask the question, what's going to be the status of my land? But that question has to be asked and answered.
In terms of the transitional authority, you think that can be established reasonably quickly?
I think so. They've been talking about the names now for about 2 months.
Beyond that is the question of statehood. Now, the agreement had the vaguest possible commitment to a road towards a Palestinian state.
Yeah, forget it. As long as Netanyahu's in power, forget it. There has to be a political change in Israel, but we can keep...
Not just Netanyahu.
No, of course, I think...
They're all saying the same thing.
Abbas needs to be replaced. There needs to be new leadership in Palestine, new leadership in Israel. The framework, the framing of this has to remain within a two-state solution framework. The international community will help to ensure that that discussion remains alive. The reality on the ground won't change until after Israeli elections. If there are Palestinian elections before Israeli elections, and they actually elect people who support peace with Israel, that will have a huge impact on the Israeli electorate. So there's also a sequencing of events that's important to happen here as well. We need to generate these new voices on both sides, because people are afraid to speak up. When I speak on Israeli television or Israeli radio, like I did this morning, about peace, people say, are you insane? How can you talk about peace? My answer is, how can we not talk about peace? This has to be the last Israeli-Palestinian war. There still are 7 million Israeli Jews and 7 million Palestinian Arabs living on the land between the river and the sea. Palestine is not going to be freed by killing Israelis. There is no military solution to this conflict, and the conflict can't be managed It has to be resolved.
You've talked about the turning point around the bombing of Qatar. What are there other moments in the last 2 years that we should pick out and remember? Turning points, low points?
We've had low points and lower points and lower points, and I'm not sure that we hit the rock bottom. We could have gone lower if it wasn't for Trump. A high point would be in November when we saw the women and children hostages come home. But again, Israel made a stupid decision of not continuing it. Hamas breached the deal. They were supposed to deliver more women and more children, and they were trying to deliver dead bodies and elderly people. And Israel said no. That was stupid, because Israel was trigger happy. They wanted to get back to war. Israel could have gotten tens of more hostages back at that point. And we know that at least 40 hostages were killed in captivity. They were taken alive and they were killed in captivity. And that is a moral stain on the government of the State of Israel, in addition to all of its other sins that it committed against the Israeli people.
And do you know what the truth is about whether hostages were killed by Israeli bombing or by Hamas, or just by
We don't know for
medical
sure.
circumstances?
Look, every time that they recovered a deceased hostage, the Israelis said that they were killed by Hamas after October 7th. I don't buy that. Thousands of Palestinians are unaccounted for because they're underneath the rubble of buildings that were bombed by Israel. More than 80% of the buildings in Gaza have been bombed by Israel or bulldozed by Israel. It is very likely that there are hostages who are underneath the rubble of those buildings as well. Maybe some who will never be recovered.
And what do you think is the way to approach the Israelis who say all of this is lies? That there was never, we didn't kill 65,000 people or more.
Ignore it. You're not going to change the narrative.
People come up to me in the street and they say, you just broadcast lies. You just tell the Hamas figures.
Just ignore it. I don't argue with these people, and there's no reason to argue with them. The reality is what's important, not what people are saying. We're shaping narratives now. We're shaping new narratives that are false narratives. The narrative of victory, I already talked about. There's a false narrative, and people will live by them.
And what about the people in European capitals who believe they are supporters of the Palestinian state, who are marching, who are holding banners, who are getting into arguments on a daily basis? Are they on the right side of history?
It depends what it is that they're calling for. Those people who call from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and don't have an answer to the existence of Israel, are doing damage to the Palestinian cause. If people don't recognize the reality that there are two nations living on this land that they both claim as their homeland, then they're doing a disservice, whether they're friends of Israel or friends of Palestine. If they don't acknowledge the existence of both people here, both people's historic and religious connection to this land, they are doing us a huge disservice, and they're not helping anyone. And my advice was either change what you're saying or shut up. It's not helpful. But Israel is accused of genocide in Gaza. It's not the Holocaust, it's not what the Nazis did to the Jews, but by the legal definition of what genocide is. And I remind Israelis that after World War II, there were many Jews who were involved in the writing of the Convention for the Prevention of Genocide. There were many Jews involved in that process. If you read the Convention for the Prevention of Genocide, what Israel has done in Gaza is genocide. And when Gaza opens up to the international media, and the world gets to see the real pictures, not just what the Arab media has been presenting, but the reality of Gaza, Israel's going to be in a very difficult situation, because what Gaza has become is unexplainable, unimaginable, and unjustified.
And do you think that will happen soon?
Very soon. Very soon. Gaza will be open to international journalism. How long can you shut it off? They will be there, and people will be shooting pictures on the ground and seeing the reality of what Israel did in Gaza.
I mean, we must be careful not to dismiss the journalism that has been done in Gaza.
No, it's
all
real.
of those realities have been shown for 2 years by
right.
Palestinian journalists.
By the way, the Israelis haven't seen it. The Israeli media has censored itself. We see some of the physical destruction. Most of the physical destruction we see is in a loop.
I saw on one Israeli news site today, drone footage of Gaza shows the reality of the destruction. And I thought, well, what have you been watching for 2 years? We've been watching that for 2 years.
We haven't been. We haven't been exposed to it. The Israelis don't watch foreign media. We don't want to see the foreign media. Forget about Al Jazeera. No one watches Al Jazeera. And we don't believe the Gazan broadcasters. The world has seen it. But, being on the ground and experiencing it will be a whole new picture that the world will be exposed to.
And your personal role? What happens now?
Right now, on this day, I am trying to make sure that there are Gazans who are involved in the discussions on the future of Gaza. Because right now it's taking place without the participation of Gazans. That seems to be the number one thing of importance right now, is to make sure the Gazans have a role in this. Beyond that, the discussions have to continue between the parties. One of the things that I'm doing with my Palestinian partner is thinking about how we change the narrative, how we create forces of partnership between Israelis and Palestinians, how we demonstrate that. We need to raise a lot of money to do that, because we're going to invest a huge amount of money in social media. That's the way to reach the young generation here, and that's who we have to reach. And we want to do it in Hebrew and in Arabic, English subtitles, but demonstrating partnership. This is the most important, urgent thing that we need to do, because a majority of Israelis and a majority of Palestinians will be willing to make concessions for peace, real peace, if they believe there's a partner on the other side. Right now they say, I want peace, but they don't.
I think just finally, I think a lot of people watching this will think, how on earth do you say so positive?
I first of all, this is my life. This is what I've been doing for the past 47 years. The only way that I can remain in this country and stay here with everything that's going on here, and most things that are going on here are against everything I believe in, is by the hope that we have the power to make the change. If I lose that hope, then I don't know how I can stay in this country, and I have no other place in the world. I'm an Israeli by choice. I moved here at the age of 22 years old because I believed that this was my home. I felt at home here. That's how, when people say, what is Israel for you? The one word that I use is home. My children were born here. They feel less connected to here than I do. It's easier for them. My daughter left Israel 7.5 years ago, lives in the south of France. She lives in a postcard, beautiful place, has a wonderful life. I have no place to go. There's no place in the world that I feel at home other than here. We have to be a society which is just. We have to be a society which believes in equality for all of its citizens. We have to be a society that's at peace with our neighbors. I wrote my first article calling for a two-state solution, calling for the establishment of a Palestinian state next to Israel, in a Jewish newspaper out of California in 1975. That was a long time ago. I represented about 2% of Israeli public opinion at the time that I wrote that article. And I believe that that is the only solution that enables Israel to be the Jewish nation state, which is democratic, equal, and just. The only way we can do that is if we end the occupation. We no longer rule over the Palestinian people. We live at peace with them. And because the Middle East has changed so much in the last decade, we as Israelis don't have to see our focus in Europe. We're not European. We're Middle Eastern. And our neighborhood is the Middle East. We're not the villa in the jungle. We could be the villa in a very nice neighborhood, because the region is changing. When I talked to some of the Gazans about how they should see their future, I said, look at Dubai, look at Doha. Maybe this is not the ideal reality of urban life, but anyone who visits those places is in awe of what was built out of the sand in 30 years. It's an amazing place. Maybe it doesn't have the best regime, maybe we want more democracy and more human rights, but if Gaza could come close to the realities that are developing in the Middle East, we will have peace here.
Gershon Baskin, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's the Fourcast. Until next time, bye-bye.